Jesus did grow up all through his teenage years, through his 20s, and then about the time he was 30, he heard about his relative, his cousin John. We know him as John the Baptist. He gets that name because he was baptizing people in the Jordan River. And where he was baptizing people is just to the east of here. And Jesus, the scripture says, went to him to be baptized. In Matthew chapter 3, it says, as soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water. At that moment, heaven was opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting on him. And a voice from heaven that said, "This is my Son whom I love. With him I am well pleased." Then it says in chapter 4, then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert, or into the wilderness, to be tempted by the devil. After 40 days fasting and 40 nights, he was hungry. There's not a lot said about what happened during those 40 days and 40 nights, just that Jesus was fasting, and we know that fasting and prayer go together, and that he was tempted. Again, there's not a lot about the temptation. There were 3 of them. In the first 2, the devil started off with this phrase, if you are the Son of God, if you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. If you are the Son of God, jump off and see if God's angels will save you. And then the third temptation, he said, if you'll just bow down and worship me, then I will give you all the kingdoms of this world. And Jesus came to this desert, to this wilderness, alone. In the 3rd week of this series, Pastor Kip was preaching, and he talked about how solitude is essential to encounter God. And Jesus was alone with God. And maybe it was that verse out of the Psalms that says, be still and know that I am God. There's not a lot to do if you're out here for 40 days and 40 nights. To be still and to know God. Maybe this is where Jesus recognized God as his rock. God as his fortress. God as his stronghold. And during these times out here alone, quietly, in the desert, in the wilderness, maybe he would go back to those scriptures that the psalmist wrote out of Psalm 42. As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, my God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. And then it says, my tears have been my food day and night. That he's thirsting for God, he's hungering for God, he's crying out to God. Maybe he goes back to the psalm that the psalmist David wrote when he was on the run from Saul and he was in the Judean wilderness. When he writes in Psalm 63, "O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My body longs for you in a dry and weary land where there is no water. I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands. My soul will be satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips, my mouth will praise you." While his body was hungering, he said his soul was being satisfied, being fed with the richest of foods. And his lips, dry, parched, cracked, still his lips would sing praise to his God. What was he praying about for these 40 days while he was in the wilderness? We don't know. Maybe it was for strength to withstand the temptation that the enemy would put on him. Maybe, and there are scholars that would disagree with this, maybe it was during these 40 days that Jesus came to really fully understand who he was. Now we know that he was completely God and completely man, but when did he know as a man, when did he know that he had his divinity? Was it when he was born? Was it when he was 12? Was it when he was 20? Or could it have been during these times? Because it was the voice of God when he was baptized that said, "This is my Son with whom I am well pleased, I love." And it's interesting that the enemy would come to him with this question, if you are the Son of God. And maybe it was during these 40 days that for the first time there was complete clarity of his identity, that yes, he was a man, but that he is the Son of God. And maybe it was during these 40 days of prayer and fasting that he began to understand what it was that God was calling him to, his whole purpose for being here, his mission, the reason that he was here as the Son of God, as the Son of Man. Because 3 years later, he would pray in John 17, that high priestly prayer, and he would pray these words, "I have brought you glory on earth by completing the work you gave to me. And now, Father, glorify me in your presence with the glory I had with you before the world began." At this point, there's no question. He knows who he is. He knows that all of the glory of heaven and of the whole universe was his before the world began. And there's no question about why he came. He's completed the work that God had given to him. During this time of prayer and fasting, he prayed for strength and God saw him through. Maybe it was this time that he got clarity, understanding of who he was, understanding of why he came. But this we do know, is that all through all of it, he wanted to glorify God. He knew that before he would ever start his ministry, he would pray first.